Hello, can everybody hear me? Great. Just very briefly, I'm Jonathan Cohler. I'm a Harvard-trained physicist, AI researcher, software developer. I serve on the Heartland Institute's Board of Policy Advisors, and I'm a member of the CO₂ Coalition. And over the past year, I've authored 6 climate papers, both peer-reviewed and preprint, with illustrious co-authors including Willie Soon, David Legates, Keston Green, and Ole Humlum. Collectively, the papers falsify the entire IPCC framework. I presented some of this at Heartland's conference in Washington this April, but today at IPCC is the first public presentation of our newest paper on the bomb radiocarbon falsification of the IPCC CO₂ attribution and more. So I'm going to start here by sharing my screen with you so you can see the presentation. So for 38 years, numerous IPCC purported metrics and associated lies have been paraded before the world as settled science. Today I'm going to show you that none of them are true and most aren't even real. One note on language I use the word lie in its plain sense, a statement that is not true. Intent is not part of the definition. Orwell's 2 + 2 = 5 is a lie regardless of who says it or why. When I call an IPCC claim a lie, I'm stating it's false. That said, intent in this case is not in doubt. The IPCC has had 38 years of access to all the data and the resources of every major government on Earth. It knows what it has been promulgating, it knows what it has been suppressing, and significant numbers of scientists know as well. I won't name any individuals, they know who they are, but I will name the institution, the IPCC. My presentation is based on 5 papers. My 2025 peer-reviewed paper, building on Essex et al. 2007 and proving again that global mean surface temperature, GMST, does not exist. Our 2026 peer-reviewed paper on the invalidity of Argo-based ocean heat content with co-authors Dave Legates, Keston Green, Ole Humlum, Franklin Soon, and Willie Soon. Our 2026 paper with co-author Willie Soon on the dominance of natural CO₂ dynamics, currently under review. My preprint proving my new physical tether theorem, and most recently, our paper with co-author Willie Soon analyzing 50 years of global bomb radiocarbon decay, falsifying the key assumptions of the IPCC carbon cycle framework. I want to acknowledge all my co-authors, and in particular, my mentor and dear friend, Willie Soon, whose decades of courageous work made much of this possible. I also want to honor the truly seminal contributions of Christopher Essex and Dimitris Koutsoyanis, whose work laid the foundation for all my papers here. So let's start with the verdict. Every major public-facing claim of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is scientifically invalid and categorically false. Not uncertain, not weakened, not in need of more research, false. I'll prove this in the next 35 minutes or so by math, physics, and data. Words lie, math does not. A statement is either derivable from its premises or not. There is no, quote, 97% of mathematicians agree nonsense. There's proof or there isn't. For 38 years, the IPCC has paraded a framework draped in equations, satellite data, supercomputer models, Academy Awards, even Nobel Prizes. A snake eating its own tail. Each piece appears to validate the next. Once you see that the circle is empty, the entire framework collapses. Each lie leads to the next, none stand on their own. Global mean surface temperature, the number that has purportedly risen 1.1 degrees since 1850. The number whose further rise to 1.5 or 2 degrees is, quote, catastrophic. What some have called, quote, the most important number in the world. CMIP, the Coupled Model Intercomparison Project. Those are the general circulation models tuned to reproduce GMST. OHC stands for Ocean Heat Content, a physically meaningless global aggregate constructed by the same averaging machinery as GMST. EEI, Earth's energy imbalance, the energy gain inferred from OHC overriding satellite radiation measurements. CO₂, atmospheric carbon dioxide, the persistence and attribution modeled by burn impulse response functions, validated against CMIP, purported driving force in the entire attribution chain. And then the loop closes back on itself. GMST tunes the models produce burn produces the budgets define the targets are written in GMST. Each of the 5 nodes is independently falsified by physics, data, and math. Let's begin. Node 1, GMST is physically meaningless. It's the anchor of every policy claim. The Paris Agreement is written in degrees of GMST. Equilibrium climate sensitivity is defined in GMST. Transient climate response is defined in GMST. Attribution regressions use GMST as a dependent variable. CMIP models are tuned to reproduce GMST trajectories. But GMST was proven meaningless in a 2007 paper by Essex, McKittrick, and Andresen, unrefuted in 19 years. 2 months ago, my physical tether theorem paper established from axioms of classical science alone that GMST cannot exist in the real world. It's completely physically meaningless. You take valid local thermometer readings, average them, get a global average, seems right. Why not? Think telephone numbers. Average the phone numbers of everyone in Boston and Halle. Then ask 3 simple questions. Whose phone number is it? Is it a phone number? Does it mean anything at all? Temperature is an intensive property defined only under local thermodynamic equilibrium in single connected systems, like a phone number that applies to 1 point on a telecom network. The Earth's surface, oceans, and atmosphere are not in equilibrium. They're an open, driven, non-equilibrium system. Persistent gradients, persistent fluxes, inhomogeneity at every scale. Physics has no law for aggregating local temperatures into a global mean. Disconnected systems cannot affect each other. Unlike quantum mechanical spooky action at a distance, which Einstein doubted and my friend and colleague John Clauser proved real, there is no thermodynamics at a distance. The temperature in Boston has 0 effect on the temperature in Halle. Temperature is defined only in a connected equilibrium system, and it is precisely the partial derivative of U, internal energy, with respect to S, entropy. Every thermometer agrees. For an aggregate of disconnected systems, there is no thermodynamics, period. The GMST formulas imposed by the IPCC, NASA, or NOAA are just made up. The output is a number, not a temperature, not anything in the physical, real world. The 2007 Essex paper showed the consequences for averaging: arithmetic, area weighted, mass weighted, fourth root, enthalpy weighted. They all yield different numbers and different trends from the same data. The choice is arbitrary. This isn't a quarrel over data adjustments. We're not talking about urban heat islands, homogenization, data improvement. No amount of data improvements can fix a category error. No averaging convention can rescue it. My physical tether theorem states it formally. An abstract math formula is scientifically valid if and only if it is connected to the physical world by a unique physical law-governed objective link. For a connected equilibrated system, that link exists. Temperature is precisely the partial derivative of U with respect to S, and every valid thermometer agrees. A unique mapping exists. For disconnected systems, no physics, no mapping, just arbitrary statistical aggregations with no unique operational definition. The outputs are meaningless numbers. GMST is a number the IPCC has falsely labeled as a temperature. Consequences are immediate and total. The 1.5 degree C limit is not a physical threshold. It's an arbitrary number with a fake label applied to a meaningless calculation. The claim that the planet has warmed by 1.1 degrees C is not a measurement. The equilibrium climate sensitivity, defined as a change in GMST per CO₂ doubling, is equally physically meaningless. The AR5 attribution statement, quote, more than half of observed warming is anthropogenic, unquote, is a regression on a dependent variable that doesn't exist. Every claim built on GMST is null and void. And AR6 went further. They abandoned their own calibrated uncertainty language and declared human influence, quote, unequivocal, and then proceeded to use the word at least 37 times. Unequivocal is not a science word. Science does not produce unequivocal claims. Math proofs do. Empirical science operates within probability and falsifiability. Karl Popper settled this long ago. By its own word choice, the IPCC has abandoned science. Node 1 falsified. Every quantity dependent on GMST collapses with it. Node 2, CMIP models are tuned to a fiction. Every IPCC projection comes from CMIP, the Coupled Model Intercomparison Project. The models are tuned so simulated GMST matches the numerically calculated and physically meaningless GMST. Remember, there is no observed GMST. Those are just Orwellian words that the IPCC uses. It is purely a calculation. Models that fail to reproduce historical GMST are discarded or retuned. GMST is physically meaningless. The model tuning target is physically meaningless. The model extracted parameters are extracted against a physically meaningless target. This is not a small effect. Cloud feedbacks, radiative forcing, equilibrium climate sensitivity, transient climate response, every one is an emergent property of models optimized against a physically meaningless target. Equilibrium climate sensitivity. Look at what IPCC actually means by this. ECS is defined as the change in GMST between models at 280 and 560 ppm CO2, both run to model equilibrium. But the Earth is never in equilibrium. The fact that a model converges to equilibrium proves it isn't modeling the Earth. The equilibrium is a feature of the model, not the Earth. And even that's not true. The CMIP model purveyors don't actually run to that fictional equilibrium. They run 150 years or so, observe the drift, and extrapolate. They assume the model will reach an equilibrium that it never reaches. ECS is an assumed extrapolation of an unreached state of a model that fails reality at the level of being able to converge in the first place. All to promulgate a number physically meaningless by definition. If A is meaningless and B is meaningless, then A minus B is meaningless. A and B are both meaningless GMST values. I know this is twisted IPCC Orwellian stuff, but follow me here, because this is what is actually happening. Trillions of dollars of policy are calibrated to a number that does not exist in the real world, to a fake equilibrium state that never occurs, in a model that fails to represent Earth by virtue of having that equilibrium state in the first place. And the model itself contains essentially none of the physics that drives Earth's permanent non-equilibrium state, namely meaningful cloud microphysics and feedbacks, real solar variability, turbulence, phase changes, biological dissipation, and more. Node 2, falsified. Node 3, IPCC's Argo-derived ocean heat content is physically meaningless. You'll notice I keep repeating those words. It's not just a tick. My personal favorite from the Circle of Lies. Argo has deployed roughly 4,400 autonomous floats across the oceans. Each measures local temperature, salinity, and pressure as they drift. And ocean heat content is a real physical concept and a physical phenomenon, but what the IPCC presents as ocean heat content is not. Orwell strikes again. Argo-derived IPCC OHC is a global statistical aggregate fabricated from local measurements through 5 layers of processing that destroy all physical meaning. This is the official Argo map, and it looks impressive, but it's cropped to hide the poles and doesn't differentiate deep from upper floats. This is the real picture from NOAA showing every float that surfaced in the 12 days prior to March 25. Look at the poles. Virtually no floats beyond 60 degrees. And the entire deep Argo fleet has deployed only 230 floats to the bottom half of the ocean, below 2,000 meters, where literally half of the thermal energy resides. But the Argo program calls that, quote, nearly complete global coverage in perfect Orwell style. Let that sink in for a moment. Half the ocean's volume sits below 2,000 meters, and it's not sampled at all. 25% of the surface is excluded entirely. Continental shelves, the Mediterranean, South China Sea, the Arctic, all ice-covered regions, add continental slopes and polar undersampling, and the IPCC interpolation scheme covers at most 40% of ocean volume. Within the 40%, the volume actually sampled around the temperature sensors is 1 part per billion, 10 to the 9th. So here's how each of the 4,200 non-deep floats works. They descend to 1,000 meters, they drift for 9 days doing nothing, they drop down to 2,000 meters, they ascend slowly to the surface over 6 to 10 hours, collecting about 1,000 temperature measurements. Then they spend about 15 minutes at the surface to get a GPS time and location fix, transmit the measurements to a satellite, rinse and repeat for a few years until the battery dies. Now, to be fair, that's valid local data gathering, but that's also where reality ends. 5 steps destroy the physics. Number 1, there is no subsurface positioning. Every measurement from the ascent is assigned to the one surface GPS time and location fix. 2, 12,000 profiles per month are extrapolated onto 45,000 grid cells using correlation scales up to 2,800 kilometers. Every single gridded value is calculated, not measured, and extrapolation does not increase information content, it decreases it. Number 3, the same invalid process constructs a reference climatology over an arbitrary 15-year baseline, adding an entire other layer of invalid averaging. Then anomalies are computed, which we like to call the ghost minus ghost trick, a discrete sum over these calculated meaningless anomalies, not an integral, which would require continuous data, multiplied by incorrectly assumed constant density and heat capacity. EEI is then declared to be 0.7 plus or minus 0.2 watts per square meter, despite 60% of the ocean unsampled and true uncertainty easily exceeding plus or minus 1 watt per square meter. The actual result, EEI, is no different from 0. Even without thermodynamic nullification, at least 7 independent uncertainty sources, mesoscale variability, deep ocean ignorance, sea level closure, framework bias, baseline bias, and more, easily exceed plus or minus 1 watt per meter squared. The claimed signal of 0.7 is smaller than the noise. Now, in 1998, the founding document designed Argo for real-time forecasting, namely hurricane intensification, marine weather, search and rescue, ship routing, fisheries, ENSO outlooks, decision windows of hours to weeks. Neither Argo nor land weather stations were designed for centennial energy accounting. The original Argo objectives contain no mention whatsoever of global ocean heat content or Earth energy imbalance because Argo was never designed for global climate monitoring. That idea was forced on the system more than a decade later during ClimateGate, when Kevin Trenberth emailed hockey stick Michael Mann and the entire climate science hockey team. He wrote, quote, "We can't account for the lack of warming, and it is a travesty that we can't. The series data shows there should be even more warming, but the data are surely wrong. Our observing system is inadequate," unquote. What followed was a 12-year program to repurpose Argo as the global energy accounting tool, force series to match Argo, and codify the result into AR6 as EEI equals 0.7 plus or minus 0.2. Our OHC paper, published on March 10th this year, agrees with Trenberth's 2009 assessment His response a few days later, he said, quote, "It is absolute nonsense. I don't want to waste my time on it," unquote. Clearly, we're over the target. Node 3 falsified. Argo-derived OHC is physically meaningless. Node 4, Earth's energy imbalance is indistinguishable from zero. First, look at the name, Earth's energy imbalance. Watts are power, not energy. The correct name would be net radiative flux or power balance at the top of the atmosphere. But honesty is not an IPCC concern. The IPCC's founding mandate charges them with assessing, quote, "the risk of human-induced climate change," unquote. Not whether humans are causing it, but that humans are causing it. The conclusion is built into the question. EEI is computed in one of two ways. First, from series top-of-atmosphere satellite measured net radiation flux, and second, from Argo-derived OHC growth divided by Earth's surface area and elapsed time. The series team itself admitted in Loeb et al. 2018 that its instruments cannot measure the absolute energy budget, and yet AR6 figure 7.2 went ahead and reported EEI as 0.7 plus or minus 2 watts per square meter with no caveat. Notice, by the way, that the number sits down at the surface on the ocean, not at the top of the atmosphere. Where does that number come from? Ceres quietly reports an absolute imbalance of 4.3 watts per square meter, then silently adjusts it to match the Argo-derived 0.7. The matched values are then cited as independent confirmation of each other. AR6, page 935, documents the adjustment openly. Circular reasoning, not validation. The signal is indistinguishable from zero. Node 4, falsified. Node 5, bomb radiocarbon falsification of the carbon cycle. My newest paper with Willie Soon, titled "One Equation Reproduces 54 Years of Bomb Radiocarbon Decay and Challenges Central Assumptions of the IPCC Carbon Cycle Framework." We extracted 2 atmospheric timescales precisely from the data. It falsifies every burn IRF model the IPCC has published. It shows post-industrial CO2 rise as natural, and it closes every standard IPCC and consensus escape hatch, including the Suez effect. Between 1955 and 1963, atmospheric thermonuclear, aka hydrogen bomb testing, roughly doubled atmospheric carbon-14, known as radiocarbon. After the 1963 test ban, the excess decayed. We have measured that continuously for over 50 years. This is the most precise impulse response experiment ever done. We created the pulse, the atmosphere gave us the response. No model, no tuning, a direct measurement of nature's eigenvalue. The IPCC has had this data set for 40 years and never used it to check, validate, or falsify any of its carbon cycle claims. They ignored it. We don't. Start with 2 definitions from AR6, glossary, page 2237. Number 1, quote, "Carbon dioxide is an extreme example. Its turnover time is only about 4 years because of the rapid exchange between the atmosphere and the ocean and terrestrial biota." Number 2, quote, "Response time or adjustment time is the time scale characterizing the decay of an instantaneous pulse into the reservoir," unquote. Both are measured atmospheric quantities. The global measured turnover time given by atmospheric inventory divided by gross output flux is 3.8 plus or minus 0.12 years. Computed 2 independent ways. First, snapshot mass balance from AR6 figure 512 and refined reservoir routing on Mauna Loa data. They agree to better than 1%, supported by dozens of peer-reviewed studies over 40 years. Even the IPCC quotes about 4 years. The adjustment time, the decay of an instantaneous pulse, is exactly what the radiocarbon experiment measures. The 1955 to 63 nuclear tests were the pulse. The answer? Decay time scale is 18.383 plus or minus 0.015 years. Single exponential, R squared 99.998% over 54 years. Using the IPCC's own AR6 definitions, The two atmospheric timescales are 3.8 years for CO2 turnover and 18.383 years for bomb radiocarbon adjustment time, linked by the bridge equations shown on the slide. Not 1,000, not 10,000, not hundreds of thousands. That's what the data says. Now, look at what the IPCC has published. The Bern IRF model is the carbon cycle equation underlying every IPCC CO2 projection, every global warming potential, every CO2 equivalent number, every remaining carbon budget, every net zero pathway. The IPCC labels its timescales as policy relevant, then applies the Bern IRF models at 100, 200, 500, and even 1,000-year horizons. The IPCC's published Bern IRF models take a specific mathematical form, a permanent fraction, A0, plus a sum of exponentials. AR2 used 5 exponentials, AR3 through 6 used 3 exponentials. Now, look at the E folding time, T sub 1 over E. AR5 and 6 say it's 165 years. AR4 says it's 96 years, AR3 says it's 46, and AR2 says it's 41. Look at the permanent fraction, A0. AR5 and 6 say it's 22%, AR4 says it's 22, AR3 said it was 15, and AR2 said it was 14%. Very strange. Now, look at the tau1, which is the longest time constant. AR5 and 6 said it was 394 years, AR4 said it was 173, AR3 said it was 171, and AR2 said it was 372. Real physical impulse responses don't double and halve and double again as modeling groups update their codes. The bomb radiocarbon record was a single exponential decay the whole time. Bern was not. Now, look at all 4 Bern IRFs against the actual data. Everyone diverges within the first year or two. The Bern models predict 33 to 48% of a pulse will remain after 54 years. The data at 54 years says 4%. The divergence from reality grows dramatically, a factor of 10 by 2020, factor of 90 by 100 years, and a factor of 18,500 at 200 years. What does the IPCC say? AR5 box 6.1, multiple residence times for an excess of carbon dioxide emitted in the atmosphere, stating, quote, 15 to 40% of CO2 emitted until 2100 will remain in the atmosphere longer than 1,000 years. Now step back for a moment. Why are they using this functional form at all? Why a sum of exponentials with a permanent constant added? The multi-exponential family is the natural function class for linear relaxation processes. That part is correct mathematics. But the family is general. The simplest member of the family, which is 1 exponential with no permanent fraction, decays to 0 with a single time constant. Exactly what the data shows, 18.383 years, permanent fraction 0. The data picks the simplest answer within the IPCC's own function class. But the IPCC doesn't allow that answer. Their published forms require permanent fractions from 14 to 22%. They require 3 or more exponentials. And neither of those requirements comes from physics or reality. There are constraints imposed on top of the function class to purposely exclude the single exponential point. Why? The single exponential has no permanent fraction. The permanent fraction is the entire policy payload. It's what creates the multi-thousand-year residence result. It is the lie buried in the math. It justifies cumulative carbon budgets, net zero targets, the claim that an emission today is committing the atmosphere for 1,000 years or more. All lies. Set the permanent fraction to what the data shows, i.e. 0, and the cumulative emissions framework collapses. Set the number of modes to what the data requires, i.e. 1, and the long tail disappears. The function class is correct, but its constraints were chosen to preserve a predetermined political conclusion. Bern is parallel. Reality is serial. We call this the parallel serial fallacy. A sum of exponentials is the impulse response of independent parallel reservoirs, each draining directly on its own time constant. That is how the Bern IRF manufactures the long tails. But reality is serial. Carbon flows from the atmosphere to the surface ocean to the thermocline, to the deep ocean. Each stage feeds the next. The deep ocean is not a parallel drain on the atmosphere. It is the end of a serial pipeline. Parallel and serial systems are governed by entirely different differential equations with different solution spaces. No parameter choice in the parallel family produces the serial answer. The actual physical serial cascade observed from upstream collapses to a single dominant fast mode, exactly what the bomb radiocarbon data show. Wrong differential equations, wrong solution space, wrong functional form, structural falsification. Now we play whack-a-lie, the 1,000-year defense. So where does the 1,000-year tale come from? What's the evidence? Answer, there is none. Not from measurement, not from observation, not from math, only never-ending pop-up assertions. The first one that always pops up is, 14C is just a tracer, it's not the bulk. We proved the operator equivalence theorem, OET, and it closes that completely. 12 CO₂ and 14 CO₂ are exchanged by the exact same physical processes. Their mass balance operators are identical up to a small fractionation factor. Identical linear operators have identical eigenvalues. The bulk and the tracer decay with the exact same time constants. Whack that one and out pops, the bomb pulse is too small, so the Ravel nonlinearity kicks in at larger amplitude. The OET closes that too. Eigenvalues are intrinsic to the linear operator, not the input amplitude. And there is no evidence of a global ocean sink slowing, ever. Whack that, and we get Ravel plus slow deep ocean circulation manufactures the tail. Bern is parallel. Reality is serial. Rapid cycling to the thermocline drains the surface. The deep ocean is downstream, not in parallel. Whack that, you've now whacked all three, and they cycle back to tracer versus bulk as if you never mentioned it. Now, one other defense I didn't put on the slide, they'll come and say, but the surface ocean is observed to be saturating. What they're talking about is there are 3 subtropical gyre stations between 22 and 32 degrees north. One is called HOT, H-O-T, in Hawaii, BATS in Bermuda, and ESTOC in the Canary Islands. The combined area of those 3 points in the ocean is less than 1/1,000,000th of the ocean surface. The only regimes where Ravel buffering could show up first because gyres have the lowest exchange flux. And the surface is only half the story. To slow that drain, the entire water column below down to the abyss would have to be saturated too with DIC. There is no such measurement. Argo OHC is meaningless. DIC sampling is even sparser. No global time series at policy precision, and the IPCC's claimed 2.5 gigaton per year ocean sink isn't measured at all. It's a budget residual, emissions minus atmospheric growth minus an alleged land sink. Even granting them their imaginary 2.5 gigaton per year ocean sink, the ocean holds 38,000 gigatons of carbon. That's 0.0066% per year, below the precision of a single DIC measurement. That would be 0.66% per century. Saturation on any policy-relevant timescale is mathematically impossible. The bomb radiocarbon record proves it directly. 8 independent fit windows across 50 years return the same eigenvalue to within 4 parts in 1,000. The global atmospheric sink rate has not slowed anywhere, ever. This is whack-a-lie. Each retreat has 0 supporting evidence. When closed, another pops up. When they're all closed, the cycle starts over again. Popper's criterion fails. The 1,000-year claim is unfalsifiable by their own standards. IPCC airborne fraction confusion. The IPCC reports a, quote, stable airborne fraction, unquote, of, quote, about 44%, cited as evidence that the ocean sink will saturate. But there are two distinct quantities, both commonly called airborne fraction, totally contradictory, and both used by the IPCC in perfect Orwellian doublespeak lockstep. First is called ABF sub L, where L stands for logical. That's the fraction of cumulative anthropogenic mass still airborne, exactly as in IPCC's own glossary definition. Under mass balance, with the 3.8-year residence time, ABF sub L is approximately 5.3%, not 44. The second is called ABF sub C. C is for crazy, that's my word. I think Koutsoyanis called it computational, but I prefer crazy. The annual ratio of atmospheric increase to anthropogenic emissions, that's a year-by-year number, and from 1966 to 2019, it ranges between 18 to 77%, up and down. It's not like uniformly increasing or anything, it's just randomly up and down between 18 and 77, a factor of 4 range. The Orwellian, quote, stable 44% doesn't exist. That arises only from unmentioned 15 to 30-year smoothing windows. And then the constancy is a property of the smoothing operator. The variance collapses by a factor of 2 at a 4-year smoothing, independently supporting our tau of 3.8 years. So here's what we did. We used the Hua et al. 2022 Global Delta 14C compilation, which is the reference data set of the field. We audit 8 steps, none fitted to produce the result. Step 1, the exponential form is discovered, not fitted. Hua reports Delta 14C for 9 aggregates, 3 northern hemisphere zones, 3 southern hemisphere zones, 2 hemispheric averages, and 1 global. Each of them independently fits a single exponential with R squared above 99.6% and sigma below 10.5 per mil. Same form, same time constant, a property of the data. You can see them all there. They all look the same, too. They all look just like that. And the unmodified data gives you the 18.389 tau and so forth. Okay, now, step 2. We now are going to look at residuals from the global fit, because they then measure the systematic bias in the Hua model. Because Hua is a model, it's a composite of lots of stations, and they put them together using a model. To qualify as a bias, a residual must be caught 2 ways. Okay, by a provenance audit, you see that as 2A there, documented Hua methodology change, and by physics impossibility exceeding what a 2-box stratosphere-troposphere model permits. Both checks independently. The first 2 points in the residuals are subtracted, the known fossil fuel correction is added, 0 adjustable parameters. Step 7, the bias corrected 32-point fit. We get tau is 18.383 plus or minus 0.15 years. R squared is now 99.998. The standard deviation is 0.539 per mil. After correction, residuals are random and below the instrumental noise floor. The fit is at the precision floor of the instruments themselves. Okay, so step 8, we look at 8 independent confirmation fits across multiple retention thresholds and time windows. So we look at 1967 to 1994, 1998 to 2010, and then 2011 to 2019. And then we also do cosmogenic variance to adjust for the solar minimum that occurred in 2009-10. All 8 return the same tau within 0.4% of 18.383 years. If the data fits, you must admit. This is not curve fitting. This is the atmosphere returning a single eigenvalue across 8 independent statistical tests. The delta 13C isotopic information gives us another independent empirical test. Different sources carry different carbon-13 signatures. Terrestrial respiration and oceanic outgassing are near minus 13 per mil. Fossil fuel combustion is near minus 28 per mil. Laboratory facts. The atmospheric CO₂ inventory is rising. There is a net input of CO₂. So what's the signature of that net input? Note, I'm not talking about the signature of the atmosphere, but the signature of the net input to the atmosphere over the instrumental years. Koutsogiannis measured it directly using the standard Keeling plot intercept method that you see on the screen. He calls the number delta 13C sub I, meaning for input. Koutsogiannis computed it across the 40-plus years from 1978 to 2022 at 4 clean air stations, both hemispheres. The result, minus 13.2 plus or minus 0.3 per mil, constant, no trend, no drift. Proxy reconstruction extended the analysis back 500 years to the Little Ice Age, same value, invariant, minus 13. If fossil fuel carbon at minus 28 per mil were a significant fraction of the net input, the flux-weighted signature would have to have drifted more negative values. It doesn't. Fossil fuel carbon is below the detection threshold as a quantitative driver of the observed CO₂ growth, period. The Suez effect, that declining total atmospheric delta is evidence of fossil fuel dilution, is completely falsified by this finding alone. The decline of total delta 13C by about 2 per mil is consistent with natural CO₂ being added at the natural signature. But the constant net input signature of minus 13.2 per mil is not consistent with fossil fuel dilution. Suez effect falsified. Now, look at 62 years of data. Total CO₂ inflow grew from 179 gigatons to 241 gigatons of carbon per year. The anthropogenic share went from 2.5 to 4.7%, still a small minority of the gross flux. Natural inflow grew 31.6%, while atmospheric mass grew 32.6%. The natural flux tracks atmospheric mass to within 1% over 62 years, within half a sigma of measurement uncertainty. These 3 independent lines converge on the same verdict. The bomb radiocarbon eigenvalue, which is 18.383. The constant delta 13C sub I, which is minus 13.2. And the direct mass balance. Different physics, different data, same answer. The atmospheric rise of CO₂ over 62 years is natural. The human contribution to the rise is negligible. Node 5, falsified. The loop is closed. I've walked the circle of lies. GMST is not a physical quantity. It's falsified by the physical tether theorem and Essex et al. CMIP is tuned to a fiction. OHC is an untethered global average over a non-equilibrium fluid. EEI is indistinguishable from zero. Burn IRF mathematically incompatible with single exponential. The rise is natural. The 5 nodes do not stand independently. GMST tunes the models. The models project OHC and EEI. The Burn IRF preserves the energy budget. The budget preserves GMST. Remove any node, the others lose their basis. Remove all 5, the framework is gone. Every downstream quantity collapses with them. Every 1.52 degree threshold, every global warming potential, every CO₂ equivalent number, every remaining carbon budget. It's all void. Every single IPCC climate metric is physically meaningless because they're all built on the same falsified constructs. More than 30 IPCC metrics gone. All physically meaningless. And now we're back to the empty circle. Their whack-a-lie Orwellian defense is that they have multiple lines of evidence. But even that fails, because 5 times 0 equals 0. 38 years. How many of the major public-facing claims of the IPCC survive? 0. Every major public-facing claim of the IPCC is scientifically invalid and categorically false. For 38 years, the IPCC has rewritten Western energy policy. Net zero by 2050, hundreds of trillions in projected expenditure, bans on combustion engines, natural gas, the cancellation of modern industrial civilization. The IPCC never subjected its claims to proper falsification. It declared them facts by repetition. Quote, unequivocal, 37 times in AR6. We performed the falsification steps they skipped. 5 hypotheses, flatly falsified, direct, empirical, absolute. 38 years, all lies, 0 physical foundation. Words lied, math didn't. Math never lies. Galileo told us that God wrote 2 books, the Bible and the universe itself. He said, philosophy is written in this grand book, the universe, in the language of mathematics. The math is the universe speaking. We listened. The IPCC did not. Thank you.